Hello world! Me again, and I'm going to talk a little bit. I am back in the house also. Sun is shining today. It does look like might be a little bit drier today. It's still wet out there because we did get some rain for a couple of days. Very, very nice, very needed. I've got flowers blooming on my trees, which is definitely necessary. Um, I kind of just wanted to go over again a little bit about what I read this morning and kind of wanted to just kind of bring up um, time, basically like the calendar time, as well as age. And what is that really when it comes down to it? How do we even really know how old we are when it comes to certain things? I know right now, most of the world, not all of the world, but most of the world goes based off of the Gregorian calendar. And of course, different religions still actually practice their holidays at different times because of the fact that they still go based off of not necessarily an old calendar. Maybe they do, but they still kind of go based off of the old process of how that calendar once upon a time that they used to use actually worked, and they still kind of stick to that. As far as our day-to-day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's usually based off the Gregorian calendar is what we use today. Again, there are certain areas of the world that actually still do not use that. This past holiday time, I learned that in Ethiopia, there is a sect of people that do not use the Gregorian calendar, and their calendar base right now, the holiday that they celebrated escapes me right now. I can't remember if it was Christmas or if it was New Year's. I think it was Christmas. And it's the first time they'd celebrated that in like however many years from the Gregorian calendar would calculate. And they're still based off of that time frame, based off of what the Gregorian calendar would aspect things. They're back in like still the 90s, which, hey, the 90s were cool, I suppose. But what I read this morning was in the Creative Mind and Success. Of course, I read all the other ones too, read a section or section, depending on which book it was, in each of the books. And this one just kind of, I really did like it because I myself am getting older. Before I know it, I will be in the half-century mark, based off the Gregorian calendar again. Because again, who's really to say how old we are? I actually, before I start what I was reading, I'm also reading this book called Apocalypse. It's an old book. It's actually 1999. This one isn't that old, but it is based off a lot of the Christianity end time type of stories. And wouldn't you know, those stories and those hopes for the new beginning actually came very, very shortly after the whole idea of what we understand when Jesus may have been here. So basically, since the Jesus stories came into existence, people have been hoping and wishing for an end of the world, that God would actually fix everything that man has decided to create chaos on. Because our earth, when we first came into existence here, however that may have been, our earth was perfect. And our earth was perfect to provide for us as well. And of course, we as humankind have kind of changed things. We've kind of become our own beings, so to speak. But in this book, Apocalypse, and that's exactly kind of where I was coming from with the time and stuff. Who's to say how time is one of the first things that it actually goes into in chapter 2 is about the calendars and such like that. And as far as the Gregorian calendar, a majority of who is actually practices it today didn't actually come into existence until the 1800s, or even the mid to late 1800s. So it wasn't until really the 1900s that we were actually all, in so many ways, on a collective, kind of looking at the same calendar. And I find that very, very interesting because, in so many of our histories and such like that, they say such and such BC, however they want to say that. But really, whose calendar were they basing that off of? And how long ago was that really? Are they doing that based off the Gregorian calendar, or are they doing it based off of the history of how it was written? And in truth, today, we don't know how long of a difference in some of those cases would be, because some of those calendars and some of those ways of being are no longer in existence, quite honestly. And I don't know if there is actual record of how people came to those calendar type things. So very, very interesting on all of that stuff when you really start to think about it. So, 1500 years ago, because we weren't necessarily all on the same Gregorian calendar, or even the masses even reading the same calendar, somebody that was, in my case, based off the Gregorian calendar, of 45 years old, may have only actually been like 16 based off of whatever calendar they were going based off of. I mean, in reality, we don't know, because there have been so many times that man has recreated the calendar based off of what worked for the environment. And then again, we also have to think about different areas of the world at one point. Since we weren't all on a collective level, they all had their own way of assessing the time frames and such like that. And there are still some places, even here in America, quite honestly, that people don't necessarily know how old they were. Their time and their date wasn't necessarily even recorded on their birth certificate. And that goes for even people my age, quite honestly. So when it comes to this sense of time on a collective, we are only now just starting to step into a frame where we are all on a collective getting into the same time zone. And I think, we keep hearing about singularity, and I know that's even part of something that I've heard of in some of the religions. And I think that's really what we're coming down to, is that singularity, where we, as a whole, humanity on this earth, are finally coming into an existence that we are actually on a collective together. And of course, COVID kind of showed us that in so many ways too. But again, back to this one, because this was based off of age, and I know as my body's been healing and stuff like that, I don't feel older. I actually feel like I am back in a place. I wouldn't say 18. My body's kind of looking that way, but I wouldn't say 18 by any means, but still probably in that early before 20s type of frame. I have that kind of energy again. And then, but at the same time, I have the experiences that I do based off of where I'm at in life. And I'd rather be at this point right now than be 19 or however like that, because I didn't have those experiences then, and am not who I wasn't then, now who I am now, if I could get that out right. But the part in the creative mind and success that I read was based off of old age and opportunity. And it even says in here, the man or woman who is 70 years old should be better able to demonstrate than the man who is only 20. So again, yeah, I don't want to be 19 again, but I love the fact that my body is looking that way, and my energy level is back on those tracks. Of course, I'm not doing some of the stuff I was doing at 19. Again, I've learned from those times. But we should have evolved a higher thought, and it is thought, not conditions, that we are dealing with. And I think that kind of goes into the whole with the calendar and the date and stuff, such like that. And he goes on to name a few women that were later on in life. One was 53 before she wrote her first book, and she's actually written a total of 80 since then. Another lady was 60 before she began her work, and she did a whole bunch of great activities that are still in existence and being known in so many ways today. And then he talked about how he, as the author of this book, took somebody and helped them redo their business and such like that. And he was, I believe the guy he helped was in his 70s, and how that gentleman that he helped just kind of boomed and boomed and boomed and boomed and boomed even more in his businesses and such. So again, how old you are, it doesn't matter on that whole thing. Your body can come back and reheal itself the way it's supposed to be. And there was one thing in here that I did want to share real quick. We must get over these false notions about age and competition. In truth, the word competition is never mentioned. So in the truth, the word competition is never mentioned. The people who think about it have never known the truth. And that's what I'm going to leave you on. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Have fun, be safe, get healthy.